Hi, my name's Kayla Furbish, and I'm a member of the Health and Wellness team at Home Base, a partnership of the Red Sox Foundation and Massachusetts General Hospital. Today we're going to go over some variations of the pose Downward Facing Dog. Downward Facing Dog is one of the most common poses in yoga. It's part of the sun salutation flow, and it's often used as a transition between poses. This pose may be challenging when you first begin practicing it, but over time, you might actually find that it becomes a resting pose. To begin, we'll talk about some of the props you might find helpful for this pose. You may want to use a chair. Choose a stable chair, one that doesn't have wheels. Yoga blocks. If you don't have blocks, you could use cans or books, anything that's about the same size. A blanket, or a foam yoga wedge. The first variation is downward facing dog with a chair. Place the chair at the top of your yoga mat and stand at the bottom of your yoga mat with your feet about hips distance apart. Bring your hands to rest on top of the chair and divide your weight evenly between your arms and your legs, allowing your head and neck to relax. If you're feeling a lot of tightness in the back of your legs or in your back while in this pose, or if you find that your knees are bent, you might choose to fold or roll up a blanket and place the blanket beneath your heels. You can fold the blanket to any thickness that will allow your heels to rest on the blanket rather than hover in the air. The next variation is downward facing dog with yoga blocks. If you don't have yoga blocks, you could use a stack of books or some cans, anything that will elevate your hands to about the same height as yoga blocks would. Place the blocks in the top corners of your yoga mat. From a tabletop position, bring your hands to the blocks, tuck your toes, then lift your hips up and back, coming into downward facing dog. Your weight should be balanced evenly between your arms and legs, and your head is relaxed. You can use the blocks at their tallest height, medium height, or at their lowest height, depending on how open your hamstrings are feeling. Now we'll talk about downward facing dog without props. Begin by bringing your hands to the mat, engaging Hasta Bandha or hand lock. In this position, you bring all 10 pads of your fingertips to the mat, leaving a slight puff of air beneath your palms. This position protects your wrists and creates a stable base from which you can build your pose. From here, tuck your toes and lift your hips up and back, coming into downward facing dog. In this pose, weight is balanced evenly between the hands and feet. Head and neck are relaxed. Gaze can be towards the knees or between the legs. And think of energetically drawing your tailbone towards the place where the wall meets the ceiling. If you find that your back is curved in this pose, take a deep bend in your knees in order to draw your tailbone up towards the ceiling, straightening your spine. Maintaining that straightness in your spine, send your heels down towards the mat and straighten your knees. In any variation of this pose, you always have the option to fold up a blanket and place it beneath your heels. Another option is using a foam wedge beneath your heels. Using a foam wedge gives you a lot of variability as to how high your heels are. When you start your pose, your heels can be towards the highest corner of the wedge, and as your hamstrings lengthen, you can slide your heels down the wedge and closer to the floor. If you're warmed up and your hamstrings are feeling pretty flexible, Another option is to use the wedge to bring the stretch into your calves. Using the wedge to lift your toes off the mat draws the stretch further down your leg. However, this can be a really intense stretch, so I recommend that you only try it if you're properly warmed up and feeling particularly flexible. Lastly, once you've found a variation of downward facing dog that works well for your body, you also have the option of adding movement to your pose. One option is to pedal out your legs. You can do this by bending and straightening opposite knees. Another option is to lift both heels at the same time and press them both down towards the earth. You could try one of these options, or you could always take any other form of movement that feels good for you. Thank you for joining us today. If you have questions about our wellness services at Homebase, please reach out to us. Visit homebase.org/connect-to-care to learn more about our clinical services and how we can serve you. Please share our content with friends and family, and don't forget to follow us on social media @Homebase Program.